Yeah, these messages are clearly doctored, is what I would say. They're doctored. Now, they could decide why they're doing that. Tyler's being forthcoming. We're protecting him in some capacity. I find that to be unacceptable. Okay? Unacceptable. I want every single text message. I want timestamps. It is conspicuous that you are not telling us when this was sent, because it sounds like it's when the campus is on lockdown and he's got to go back and he's got to clean up. And then all of a sudden we're in the next day when his dad is getting clued in after the picture's been released. They're not telling us that, okay? And you have a right to be a little bit uncomfortable about that, because I'm a lot of bit uncomfortable about that. We need full answers.
The FBI is lying to us about Charlie Kirk. That's what Candace has been saying. She's been saying that the story does not add up, and now she's hinting at something deeper, that the FBI's hidden reports on Kirk's alleged killer tell a very different story than the neat package the media's been selling. Let's start with the basics. Charlie Kirk was down in Utah. The suspect, Tyler Robinson, got charged with capital murder. Straightforward, right? The government says one shooter, one rifle, one victim, end of story. But Candace ain't buying it. On her podcast, she laid out detail after detail that makes the official narrative look shaky. She pointed to Governor Cox's press conference where he fumbled over describing the suspect, first mentioning one outfit, then another. She highlighted oddities in the text messages the FBI released, where whole chunks of timestamps seem to be missing. And then there's the so-called confession from George Zinn, a man who randomly tried to take credit for the killing, even though evidence clearly showed he didn't do it. Candace's question? Why are so many strange threads being brushed aside like they don't matter? Her framing is blunt. This isn't left versus right. This is good versus evil. She said people need to wake up and see this case for what it really is, not just a tragedy, but possibly a cover-up. And the way she tells it, the FBI is sitting on files that could answer the questions, but instead, those reports are being kept hidden from the public. And here's the thing, post-Epstein, folks don't trust official narratives anymore. We've been told case closed before, only to find out years later that the truth was buried under red tape and media spin. Candace is leaning right into that skepticism, saying if they're hiding reports now, it's because those reports don't fit the story they want us to believe. That's why her claims are landing so hard, because whether you love or hate her, she's tapping into something real. The sense that Charlie's death was too clean, too quick, too neatly explained. When witnesses describe unusual traffic at Robinson's home, cars nobody in the neighborhood recognized, and when other names like Lance Twiggs, the trans boyfriend, barely get mentioned in mainstream reports, it feels like pieces are being left out on purpose. So the question Candace is daring people to ask is simple but explosive. If the FBI's hidden reports came out tomorrow, would they prove Charlie Kirk's murder was just one man with a gun? Or expose a network that goes way deeper?
Just this past Easter Sunday, they are telling me that he showed up on drugs and he was spouting out of his mouth about political stuff. And at this point, they felt that he could not be around children, that they felt that he had become increasingly more radical, increasingly more dangerous, and just sort of off the rails. They said that they're unhappy that the media is presenting him in this like manner, like he's just this kind of like soft guy, or like, you know, a person that was just transitioning. There's like nothing problematic. There's no prodding. They don't buy the story. Okay. Lance's family is telling me that they are not buying the current story and that they feel that more people are involved.
The way this case is being spun right now depends entirely on where you get your news. If you follow the FBI press releases and the mainstream outlets, it's an open and shut tragedy. Tyler Robinson, a troubled 27-year-old with a rifle, acted alone. He's been indicted. The state will seek the death penalty, and justice is supposedly on the way. But if you listen to Candace Owens this week, you'd swear we're living in two different realities. Candace is on record saying the story we've been told doesn't pass the smell test. She pointed out that Governor Cox contradicted himself at the press conference, fumbling over what Robinson was wearing and leaving people confused about whether police even had the right man. She dug into the FBI's text message leaks, the ones meant to prove Robinson's motive, and said whole timestamps were missing, almost like someone edited the timeline before dropping it. And she reminded her audience that George Zinn, the random man who falsely confessed, was allowed to float around in headlines for days before the FBI quietly walked it back. Her argument? That chaos in the early reporting wasn't just sloppy, it was suspicious. Meanwhile, the media keeps reinforcing the lone gunman angle. Outlets are saying Robinson was angry, unstable, maybe even inspired by online rhetoric. They highlight the rifle, the surveillance footage, the indictment details. To them, the story is tidy and the takeaway is simple. Political violence is real, but we caught the guy. Candace's spin cuts against all that. She's telling her audience that Robinson may not have been acting alone. She's pointing to unusual traffic at his house, cars that neighbors didn't recognize, and saying the FBI knows more than they're admitting. She even suggested that hidden reports might reveal connections to bigger networks or outside influences. And in her words, this isn't about Democrat versus Republican, it's about good versus evil. Social media picked up both narratives fast. On one side, you've got people calling Candace opportunistic, accusing her of turning grief into conspiracy fodder. On the other hand, her fans are treating her like the only voice brave enough to call out the FBI.
And I've got more people reaching out to us, people that were at the event, people that were at Turning Point USA. We got some questions to ask, and I'm gonna ask all of them because guess what? I don't take money from donors. So you got a problem here. I don't want your money. I don't need your money. What I want and I need is the truth.
Let's step back for a second because Candace Owens isn't just saying the FBI is sloppy. She's asking a deeper, more dangerous question. Who actually benefits from Charlie Kirk being gone? Because once you look at motive, the whole case takes on a new glow. Candace claims Charlie was under heavy pressure in the months before his death, not just from critics on the left, but from his own donors. The same billionaires who once bankrolled him were allegedly pulling back, upset about the direction he was heading. And what was that direction? Candace says Charlie was getting bolder, more independent, even questioning things he used to defend without hesitation. One of those flashpoints was his stance on that blue country in the Middle East. For years, Charlie was one of their loudest defenders in the conservative movement. But recently, he'd started platforming voices that were more critical. In his own words, during an interview, he admitted he'd been smeared as anti-Semitic simply for letting guests raise questions. That shift, Candace argues, didn't just ruffle feathers, it rattled wallets. Donors threatened to walk, money dried up, and Charlie was left in a financial bind that made him vulnerable. Now put yourself in the shoes of those donors, those political players, those international allies. If Charlie kept moving in that direction, if he went from loyal soldier to unpredictable liability, he could have damaged more than his own brand. He could have disrupted an entire ecosystem built on his influence. That's why Candace keeps saying this case isn't just about Robinson with a rifle. It's about the bigger network that might have wanted Charlie out of the way. And here's where the FBI's hidden reports come back into play. If those files show Robinson had unusual contacts, if they reveal unexplained money trails or outside influences, then suddenly this isn't about a lone wolf at all. It's about powerful interests eliminating a problem. Remember, history is full of examples where people who strayed too far from the script paid the price. Leaders who questioned alliances, activists who stopped towing the line, they either got smeared, defunded, or silenced. Candace is painting Charlie as the latest in that lineage. So when she asks, who benefits? The answer isn't Robinson. He gains nothing, but donors who were tired of Charlie's shift, political elites who wanted him controlled, they gain stability, they gain silence, and maybe, just maybe, that's what the hidden FBI files are protecting.
Okay, so I want to be very clear here. No one, and I mean absolutely no one, outside of my husband and Erica Kirk has the power to shut me up right now. That's it. Two people. If you got to make an appeal, you got to go to them, okay? That's what I just said is meant to be a dig to the donors that are making frantic calls, trying to politic this situation under control because they know I'm telling the truth.
Now, y'all got to understand just how much money and pressure was behind the scenes, pulling the strings, because you must know that Charlie didn't rise to the top of conservative politics on charm alone. He was bankrolled. Billionaires, mega donors, and political backers poured millions into his company, Turning Point USA, because he was their golden boy, young, loud, loyal. But according to Candace, that loyalty started to crack. Behind the scenes, Charlie was facing financial stress. Donors were allegedly threatening to pull out if he didn't toe the line, and the line he was wobbling on, that blue country in the Middle East, for years, Charlie waved their flag as hard as anybody in the conservative movement. He called them America's closest ally, defended their policies, fundraised alongside their supporters. But then the shift started. He began platforming critics. He let tougher questions slip through. And in an interview, he admitted the smears were already hitting him, being labeled anti-Semitic for even daring to let debate happen. That's the kind of thing that makes powerful people nervous, because in American politics, criticizing that blue country ain't just risky, it's career-ending. We've seen politicians sidelined, journalists canceled, activists blacklisted, and here was Charlie, one of their loudest defenders, now wobbling in public. Donors allegedly told him, straighten up or lose the bag. Candace's framing is chilling. Charlie wasn't by chance. He was being cornered first by money and the people who could make or break him financially, then by reputation, the smears that painted him as a traitor to causes he once championed, and finally, by fate, a gun bullet at a Utah campus. Now add the FBI's hidden reports to that mix. If they show Charlie was indeed under donor pressure, if they reveal ties between Robinson and circles bigger than himself, it changes everything. It means Charlie's death wasn't just violent, it was strategic, a silencing. And that's why Candace is so loud about this, because she knows once you whisper that blue country in the Middle East in the same sentence as donors and FBI files, people perk up. She's playing with fire, but she's also forcing the question, was Charlie Kirk punished for breaking ranks?
That's what they always do. They threaten to sue you. They threaten to smear you, to libel you. How dare you even ask the question?
So where does all of this leave us? Charlie Kirk, Candace Owens, and the movement he helped shape. Because if Candace is right, his story is no longer about a single night in Utah. It's about legacy, power, and what happens when the wrong people start asking the right questions. For Charlie Kirk, the legacy is shifting before our eyes. To the mainstream, he's being remembered as a conservative firebrand who energized campuses and fought the culture wars. But in Candace's telling, he's a martyr, a man squeezed by donors, smeared for wobbling on sensitive issues, and finally cut down before he could pivot fully to independence. His legacy becomes less about turning point rallies and more about the dangers of speaking against untouchable interests. And that shift is powerful because martyrdom always outlives movements. For Candace Owens, this saga is a test of her own influence. By claiming the FBI is hiding files, by naming donors, by hinting at that blue country in the Middle East, she's putting herself in the hot seat. Some say she's exploiting grief, others say she's the only one with guts to say it out loud. Either way, she's now tied to Charlie's death as its loudest interpreter. If the official story unravels, she'll look prophetic. If it doesn't, she'll wear the stain of conspiracy mongering. But one thing's for sure, she's already claimed the keeper of the truth role that makes her central to how this tragedy gets remembered. For the movement, the vacuum is real. Turning Point USA was Charlie's baby. Without him, it's vulnerable to donor shifts, to leadership fights, to image problems, and Candace knows it. That's why she warned about people sliding into Charlie's chair, because in politics, when a seat empties, rivals don't mourn long, they maneuver. And the FBI, if they really are hiding reports, as Candace insists, then their credibility takes yet another hit. Post-Epstein, post-Hunter, post every case closed that turned out to be a cover-up, people don't trust neat packages anymore. If the files stay sealed, suspicion grows. If they leak, even messier questions emerge. Either way, the Bureau loses. So what's next? Expect more leaks, more speculation, and more people picking sides? To some, Charlie Kirk will be the conservative soldier lost to random violence. To others, he'll be the man who dared to step out of line and paid the ultimate price. And the irony, sis, Charlie once told Candace, there are always more slaves than masters. Now in death, his story is proving it. Because no matter how tightly the FBI tries to master the narrative, the people, the slaves in that metaphor, are refusing to stop asking, what are they hiding?